This is a river spot in which I think you will want to call, and I am going to argue for folding. This is a river spot in which I think you are going to want to fold, and I'm going to make an argument calling. To make these arguments, I'm going to introduce a new thought process that's going to make bluff catching simple and easy for the rest of your poker career, and that thought process is called the bluff box. The bluff box is a concept that's mainly going to be used on the river. So before we see what it is, let's see how we got to the river in this pocket kings hand where I'm going to be advocating for a hero fold. So we open kings in the cutoff. Tight looking player makes a bad 3-bet size. This is probably a weaker tight player, therefore. And we make a big 4-bet with pocket kings. Not really a hand we want to slow play. We get the call. And on Jack 7 deuce, we bet 1/3 pot for value. Villain calls. The turn is the queen of clubs. This is an interesting turn node because villain doesn't really have too many one-pair hands that we can get value from here. If you think about it, if they have ace queen of diamonds, they probably fold the flop at this juncture. If they have ace queen offsuit with a heart, they probably fold pre-flop. They aren't taking any other offsuit one heart hands with big cards in them to the turn apart from aces. And if they have 10s or 9s with a heart, yes, we could make one bet. But those aren't going to be a ton of combos, and we can always bet the river against them. It's not clear that we can bet multiple times against those hands for value. So all in all, there isn't really much incentive to bet this turn, given that villain can still have pocket jacks, pocket queens, slow played flushes, and stuff like that. On the 6 of diamonds river, another reason that we checked the turn here was for transparency. Transparency is a very key concept in poker. Back in the day, they would say, I'm going to bet for information. Really? You want to check for information, because free information is better than just losing the money that you would have lost by calling just to find out if they've got it and then still not even know. Anyway, this is a spot where we're going to get a lot of transparency. When villain goes all in on this river for effective 96.73 big blinds, what they're saying is that they have kings beat. So you want to use the bluff box, which I'll introduce in a second, in any situation where your hand is a bluff catcher. That means that it's beating every bluff in villain's range, but it's not beating a single value bet and not even chopping with a single value bet. Okay, maybe he could have the other two combos of the other one combo of kings here, but I think that's somewhat unlikely from pre-flop. So let's make that bluff box fall from the sky. The bluff box is a concept that comes into play on the river, and it is full of hands that could potentially bluff. The bluff box is not full of hands that are definitely going to bluff, but it's the hands in villain's range that don't have much showdown value that would be tempting to turn into a bluff on the river. The first thing you want to ask is, how full is the bluff box? And the second question you're going to ask is, how likely is it the villain is taking the lid off here? Because when the bluff box is really full, and a player removes the lid, i.e. has the cognition about bluffing, has the thought, I'm going to try to win by bluffing, suddenly tons of bluff combos spill out onto the fill, and villain is very quickly and suddenly grossly over bluffing, and your call is very suddenly very winning. On the other hand, if villain has hardly any bluffs in the bluff box to start with, like villain just doesn't get to the node in question with very many hands that would be perceived as air or low showdown value, then even if they do take off the lid, even if they do decide, I'm going to bluff in this spot, there's still only a handful of bluffs falling onto the table, and those are going to be dwarfed by value bets whenever villain has a reasonable amount of value bets in their range. You could also imagine there's a value bet box, but we'll come to that maybe in another video. Let's apply the bluff box here. How many hands that would be perceived as low to zero showdown value does your opponent land with on this river? Does he reach the river with? Again, retracing the action from pre-flop where he 3-bets, calls a big 4-bet out of position, calls a flop c-bet. How many hands that are air or close to air or low showdown value are going to reach this spot? If you answered none, you are very nearly correct. The hand that comes to mind here for me is Ace of Hearts King, which might not want to 5-bet at this stack depth, but then again it might. That to me is the only hand that's really still hanging around here that will commonly perceive itself as a bluff. Now, you could argue that 9s with a heart is a good bluff in this situation, and maybe a solver would use a hand like that at some frequency, I don't know. But you have to think about your opponent population. If you're playing low stakes, micro stakes, even mid stakes, you're not playing against crushers, most people are going to miss those bluffs most of the time. Those hands are not going to be in the bluff box because they're not perceived as low enough down in showdown value. They're not natural to bluff with. They're still winning against ace king, for example. They're very intuitive just to check here, right? So when villain goes all in, we can see quite a few value hands. The aforementioned pocket jacks, maybe a rarish pocket sevens, pocket queens for sure, possibly a queen jack suited that got a bit sticky pre-flop, maybe some slow played aces, and then a slew of flushes like the ace queen of hearts, the ace 10 of hearts, maybe a hand like the 6-5 of hearts or 4-5 of hearts or ace 5 of hearts that's low played flop. Very intuitive thing to do here. And so there's plenty of value. And the bluff box is basically empty. So even if villain is taking off the lid here and emptying whatever bluffs are in that box onto the table, they're still under bluffing and this is still a fold, and you might not like it. You might not want to fold pocket kings, and you might say, I didn't play a goddamn 4-bet pot just to be folding pocket kings. Yeah, kids these days and their solvers. I don't know what the accent became, but you know, you need to let go of the fact that it's kings. If you do the bluff box properly, it's going to lead you to the verdict of folding this hand. I'll be totally honest with you guys. You know how long I took to fold this hand? Write in the comments how long you think I took to make this fold in game, and we'll see who's closest. Don't cheat. The answer is 0.3 seconds, because I was in the zone when I played this hand. I was very dialed in, and when I was on the turn, I'd already decided that one of the absolutely amazing merits of checking back the turn was to be able to fold the river with crystal clear confidence against the jam. I was so certain that jam was heavily under bluffed due to the bluff box that I basically was just planning to fold immediately. And I folded instantly when this river bet happened. And that might look insane, but when you think about it, I think this is a good fold. Let me know in the comments if you disagree. We can have a good old-fashioned argument about it. We can keyboard warriors at each other. It'll be great fun. Okay, let's look at a hand where the bluff box makes me want to call, and indeed I did call this river in this second hand we're going to look at, in a spot where I think you guys all fold. Okay, not all of you, but I think most of you fold here. MDA would say that, you know, people fold a lot to 3 barrels in a lot of situations, right? In grade E of the Carrot Poker School, where we list some MDA, we look at 3-bet pots, and one of the things that we see is that bluffing in them is pretty good on a lot of lines, right? That's all I'm going to say. You'll have to watch grade E to get the full picture, but it's pretty good in a lot of lines. And a lot of regs know that. And this was a reg. This was someone that was playing aggressively, was not just one of the weak type players in the pool. And they 3-bet here. We have 8s on the button. We made the call. The flop was queen, 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 which is a pretty ridiculous flop. Like, really, really absurd looking flop. Like, just look at that flop. Isn't it absurd? Villain bet's tiny. I don't know if this is the right sizing for queen, queen, queen. Like, on queen, queen X, like, we can have a queen a lot, and therefore aces and kings are really devalued. On queen, 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 we have a queen hardly ever, half as often, and so aces and kings are just twice as good, almost. So I think you can use a bigger bet on queen, queen, queen than you can on queen, queen X. But anyway, villain goes small, and they go big on turn. And we call again because, you know, we has full house. It's a pretty good reason to call again. And then on the river, villain goes all in for a size that basically denotes them as a reg kind of thing. Not necessarily, but probably. But we already knew it was a reg. And the thing is that the bluff box here is kind of full. It's sort of bursting at the seams, because if you imagine that your opponent here is bluffing turn with tons of hands that are just like bolt draws to, you know, stuff that can outdraw your 8s and 9s, the most common pocket pairs you have, right? Because you might 4-bet 10s sometimes, although I wouldn't really recommend it at lower stakes usually. You might 4-bet jacks, you'll certainly 4-bet kings, aces. So when someone has a hand like king jack, king 10, jack 10, ace king, ace jack, ace 10, 10 9, jack 9, king 9 suited, they're going to bluff a lot. And if they've landed on the river, if the bluff box is quite full of combos, and then there's someone who's quite likely to remove the lid. Remember, when the lid comes off the bluff box, all the bluffs spill out. They're now in villain's bluffing range, his actual range for making this bet. And now we can compare it to value. What are the value combos? You're saying you have quad queens. Okay, sure. You can have ace queen offsuit, king queen offsuit. That's what? 6 combos? 8 combos. 1 queen by 4 aces, 1 queen by 4 kings. You can have queen jack suited, 1 combo, queen 10 suited, 1 combo, queen 9 suited, maybe 1 combo. So we're talking about like 11 combos of Queen X. We're talking about aces and kings jamming here. They might jam, they might not. They might get too scared. They might decide to bet smaller. They might decide that quads is too likely in our range because we also have all of those Queen X hands. So there might be aces and kings. Let's say they're in there 2/3 of the time. So we take like 4 combos of each. That's another 8. Add them to the 11. That's 19 value combos at a push, right? Maybe Jacks gets in once in a blue moon. Okay, it's 20 now. It's 21. Ace Jack is 16 combos. You bluff Ace Jack, you're just over bluffing automatically. You then bluff 10-9 suited, you add another 4, you're now like bulbously over bluffing. You're over bluffing to such a disgraceful, disgusting extent that you're basically a pig lying in the garbage in your own filthy bluffs. So when we call this river with eights, it's because, you know, it's not because we know the lid has come off the bluff box. We don't know the opponent. We don't know whether they're bluffing. We don't know whether they even have it in them to be bluffing, but we do know that they are the type. We know that it's fairly likely that the lid is coming off. We don't know for sure. And we know most crucially that if the lid is coming off this bluff box, ladies and gentlemen, then this spot is very overbluffed. Look how clever I am. It's the wrong way to react when you win by hero calling. The right thing to do is throw a thank you emoji at your opponent, of course. If you like the bluff box, the Carrot Poker School is filled with tons of analogies like that, of thought experiments, metaphors, rules, theorems. It has more theorems in it than this guy's range has bluffs in it. So check it out at Carrot Corner. I hope you've liked this video. Click the top link in the description for all of my other content. And stay tuned for more concepts like this here on YouTube. Please hit the like button, please comment, please let me know what you think. Please feel free to debate any of these hands down below. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.